Hey, hello everyone. Thanks for joining our workshop today. My name's Isaac. I'll be the instructor for this workshop. And today we're going to be learning about how to build a chatbot using NodeJS and Twilio. Okay, so this workshop assumes that you have a rudimentary understanding of basic JavaScript. Okay, at the very minimum, you need to understand, just the basics. But if for some reason you just don't, or if maybe we're going too fast, don't worry, because we're actually recording this lecture. So we're going to make it available after this, and you can always watch it later if you need to. So that brings up another point, is the questions part. Okay, we've got a lot of ground to cover, and we want to make sure that we let you guys out before midnight tonight. So if we're going to accomplish that, we need to hold the the workshop questions until after we're done building the bot. Okay, at which time you can ask about, whatever you're curious about. But again, don't worry if you get behind or something and you're like, oh no, I'm not caught up with you. Because again, we're recording this, so you can always watch it later and go as slow as you want at that time. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and first talk about the technologies we're going to be using to create our chatbot. Okay, so I'm assuming at this point you all know what a chatbot is, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, a chatbot is a software program that has pre-programmed responses in regards to incoming conversations. Okay. So chatbots come in many forms. Facebook has chatbots, okay? So there's like messenger chatbots. Those are really big. But then they also have like text messaging chatbots, okay? You probably see it on TV, text blah, blah, blah to this number, right? They're very useful for customer service-oriented roles, right? Where if the questions are the same every time, instead of paying a human to do it, you could just create a chatbot. So 1-800-Flowers is one of the best examples of this. Normally, back in the day, if you wanted to get flowers ordered from 1-800-Flowers, you would have to call them, right? Place your order, and they would pay someone on the phone to take the number of flowers, right, your address down, and all that, and they ask the same questions every time. And then, once technology got better, 1-800-Flowers created a chatbot which does it for you. And you can actually order these flowers from Facebook. But I mean, bots don't end there. They've got pizza ordering bots, clothes ordering bots, you name it. They're all over the place. So we are going to create a simple event planning bot. Okay, so for example, whenever you have, say, a birthday party or a wedding, one of the worst things in the world is you have to get all the invitations together, right? You have to go out, buy all the invitations, put them together, write them all, get everyone's address, send them to the person's address, and hope that they RSVP, right? And yeah, that's not a very efficient way to go about it. So today we're going to create a chatbot which acts as an RSVP. So all we'll have to do is we'll tell the people we're inviting to text RSVP to a specific number, and then that will activate our chatbot to ask them specific questions like, what's the name of your group, how many kids you have, how many adults you have, right? And then we'll be able to save all that information to a database. And from there, we don't have to send out any mailing invitations or anything like that. We can actually just have all that information stored, and we'll know how much people to expect for our event. So knowing the basic premise, let's go ahead and go over to NodeJS, or not NodeJS, Twilio.com. Okay, so Twilio is a cloud communications provider. Okay, and we're going to use Twilio today for their API, but more specifically their SMS API, so we can send text messages and also receive them. As well, we are going to be using Node.js. Okay, and this is going to be our server-side runtime environment. And then we're going to be using Express to set up a publicly exposed endpoint, which we're going to use to intercept the incoming messages from the text, and then send back appropriate responses. And then we're going to be using Mongoose as our object modeling tool for our database items. Okay, and so the database we're going to be using today is MLab. Okay, and MLab is a MongoDB cloud provider. Okay, So if you're familiar with MongoDB, this is just a cloud service. Okay, so this is where we're going to be storing all of our conversation data. And finally, we're going to be using a tool called ngrok to set up a secure tunnel to our local host. Okay, and we're basically going to forward our local host to a live domain, which we can then use as a live server and, you know, communicate with the Twilio provider. Okay, so now we've got a handle on, you know, what technology we're going to use. Let's go ahead and let's start off by creating a Twilio account. Okay, so I'm going to use a dummy email today because I already have a Twilio account and I don't really want to use it for this workshop. So you can use your own email or you can use a dummy email. It's really up to you. So today I'm going to use this 10-minute mailer here. So I'll just refresh. And oh, looks like, here we go. That's better. So as you can see, I just got 10minuteemail.com. Just give me a random email. Then I'm going to go to twilio.com and I'm going to go to sign up. Okay. From here, I'm just going to sign up as John Doe. Of course, you can sign up as yourself. I'm not going to put any company. And then I'm just going to paste in the email. From here, I have to choose a password. And they're really big on security over at Twilio, so they make you use 14 characters. So I picked one called I Love Coder Camps, just to make sure it's long enough. Okay, so let's try that again. I love Coder Camps. Okay, I think I got it. So next it's going to ask what product you want to use first, and we'll say SMS because we know we're using the text messaging. Okay, then what's asking us to build, and just say you don't know yet. You know, you don't have to specify. Choose our language. Today we're going to be using NodeJS, and then I'm just going to choose the you know, lowest, less than 100,000. Okay. Finally, I got to verify that I'm not a robot and get started. Okay, so we'll just give it a minute to configure our new account. And next, it's going to have us do verification. Okay, so now you need to put in your phone number. Okay, so I'm just going to enter my phone number here and verify via SMS. Okay, so what I've done today for our workshop is I've set up something called AirDroid, which is connected to my phone. And so what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to see all the incoming messages. Okay, and as we can see, I just got a message from Twilio, right, to activate my account. So we'll copy that and I'll paste that right in here. Of course, you can use a regular phone. You don't have to use that mirror program. Okay, and I will verify I'm not a robot and I will submit. Okay, we'll just give it a minute to load that up and we'll move forward. Okay, so next let's go ahead and give our project a name. I'll just call mine chatbot and create the project. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and navigate to our console dashboard. Okay, and as you can see, they've given us some credentials that we can use for the SMS API. Okay, so now we need to make sure that you have signed up for an MLab account. And if you haven't, just go to mlab.com and you can sign up for a free account. Okay, and then once you log in, you'll be presented with this screen. And then you also need to install ngrok on your machine. Okay, so you don't have to sign up, but you have to download ngrok so we can set up that address forwarding. Okay, so next we can actually start coding. All right, so let's go ahead and let's open up our command line and let's change directories onto the desktop. And then let's make a new directory and we'll go ahead and call this one chatbot. Okay, and then let's go ahead and change directories into chatbot. And then I'm going to open up my text editor. Now I'm using Atom today, but if you're using a different text editor, that's okay. As long as you can write code, you should be good. Okay, Then looks like I got some ghost files here. So just get rid of those. And now we need to start off by installing all the packages we need to run our application. Okay, so to install those, I'm going to be using npm package manager, and that comes as part of the Node installation. Okay, so you should have it if you've installed Node. And what we're going to do is, before we install our packages, we're going to initialize a package.json file, so that way we can track all of our different installations. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start off by saying npm init. Okay, and then it's just going to prompt us for a bunch of metadata information, which I'm just going to hit enter through all of it. You know, it's not really relevant at this time. Okay, and as we can see, we get package.json. And yeah, again, this is all pretty informational. Okay, so one thing that isn't informational is this scripts part, right? This actually affects functionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable my scripts to run npm start, which will then read my Node server. Okay, so we're going to do that after our installation here. So let's start off by running our first installation, which is Twilio. Okay, so we're going to just start off by saying npm install Twilio, and then we need to use a ---- save flag. And that way we can track it to our package.json. Okay, so I'm just going to hit enter, and then it should populate a node modules folder here in my file tree. Perfect. Okay, and as we can see here, it's been tracked to our dependencies as well. Okay. So next, let's install Mongoose. Okay, so we say npm install Mongoose ---- save, enter, and it'll bring in Mongoose. Okay, next let's bring in Express. So we'll say npm install Express ---- save, enter. All right, last package here, body parser. Okay, so let's go ahead and say npm install body-parser. Okay, and we didn't talk about this one yet because it's not, you know, real big tech like these other ones here. It's simply a library which is going to allow us to parse our incoming requests. That's it. Okay, so let's just go ahead and install that as well. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and create our server file. So I'm going to go to my root here, say new file, and let's just call this app.js. Okay. So now I can go back and set up my script command. Okay. So I'm going to go to the end of test, and I'm going to say start, colon, and then we will run node app.js. So now whenever we run npm start, it's going to run this command for us, and it's going to enable our server. Okay, so now we have that set up. Let's go ahead and let's import all of our dependencies. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start off with Express. So I'm going to say const Express equals require Express. Okay, let's do the same thing with Mongoose. We'll say const Mongoose equals require Mongoose. Next, let's go ahead and bring in body parser. So we'll say const body-parser equals require body-parser. Okay, and now let's create a new Express app. So we'll say const app equals Express initialize. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to set up our Twilio client. Okay, and this is what's going to allow us to create text messages, receive them, all that good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say const Twilio equals require Twilio. Okay, and now I need to set up my credentials. Okay, and this is how Twilio is going to authenticate who I am. Okay, so I'm going to start off by saying const account SID. Okay, and if you remember, we were given credentials when we first signed up for Twilio. Okay, so here in our our dashboard, I have my account SID. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it in like so. All right, now we need to account for our auth token. So I'm going to say const auth token equals, and we'll come on over here, and we will copy our auth token. And we'll paste that in like so. Okay, so now we've brought those in. Let's go ahead and let's create our client. So we'll say client equals, and then we're going to say Twilio or new Twilio. And then we'll pass in our account SID and as well our auth token. So now we can use this client variable to make our message requests. Okay, next, let's go ahead and let's set up body parser. So I'm going to say app.use. We're going to say body parser .url encoded extended false. Okay, and this is just going to put these in the correct format so we can use them in our operations. Okay. So next, let's go ahead and connect to the database. So we can do this by saying mongoose.connect. And then we need to pass in our connection string. So we can get this by going to mlab and creating a new database. So I'm going to go here and say create new. And then we'll choose Amazon for the cloud provider and Sandbox for the plan type. And we'll continue. Next, I'll choose the region nearest me, which is Virginia, and I will continue. And next, I'm just going to create a database name. So I'll just call it codercamps-db. Verify everything's correct, and I'm going to submit my order. And it'll just take a second to set that up. Okay, so now our database has been set up. We can go inside it, and we can set up a database user. Okay, so my database user is different from my account user, right? So normally account is like the company, and this would be like, you know, my organizational users that have the privileges for the database, right? So I'm just going to add a database user. I'm going to call him Isaac with a password of 123. And we'll create. Okay, so now we can see we have one database user. So now we can use that user's credentials inside our connection string here to connect to our cloud database. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to place it inside of the connection field here. Okay. So next, let's go ahead and let's set this up to use the Mongo client. Okay, so I'm going to say use Mongo client true. Okay, and then we need to take these placeholders and we need to replace them with our actual database username and password. Okay, so if you remember, I named it Isaac and I gave my password 123. Okay, and we'll keep everything else the same because that actually points to the correct address. Okay, so now we can run our callback function. Okay, so when this is successfully connected, let's go ahead and let's run a console log to let ourselves know. So we'll say db connected. Alrighty, next let's go ahead and let's set up our root. Okay, so with Express we'll say app.get and we'll pass in our request and response objects. From here we'll just end the response. Next, let's go ahead and let's set up our server. Okay, so we're going to say app.listen. We're going to tell it to listen in on port 3000. And when we are successfully connected, let's go ahead and let's console log the following. We'll say server connected. Okay, so now we have all that set up. Whenever we run npm start, it's going to read this file, and it's first going to connect to our database and then to our server. and we should see those console logged accordingly. Okay. So let's go ahead and save all, and let's refresh. Okay, so I'm going to say npm start enter. Okay, so as you can see, lets us know server was connected and database was connected. Okay, so now we know we're officially connected. We can now communicate with the Twilio API. Alrighty, so now we've got this running on localhost 3000. What we can do is we can use ngrok to forward it to a live address. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to set up a new window. And with this new window, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run ngrok on port 3000. Okay, and as you can see, it lets me know it's forwarding my local host to this live port. So now I can go ahead and I can plop that in URL here. And this is a live address on the internet. Any of you watching this could actually navigate here right now. It's up and running. Okay. So the reason we did this is because Twilio requires us to have a live server to interact with, right? So that's why we're forwarding it to a secure tunnel. So moving forward, let's go ahead and let's configure our Twilio webhook. Okay, and if you guys don't know what a webhook is, it's just basically an open endpoint on the internet ready to catch data. And then once it does catch data, we are going to then post and forward that to another endpoint. Okay, so let's navigate to Twilio. Okay, and inside Twilio, let's go ahead and go to all products and services and go down to phone numbers. Because right now we actually don't have any phone number. Okay, so what you got to understand is, Twilio's phone number and our phone number is going to be different, right? We want to use our phone number like we're the guest who's being invited, and the Twilio phone number will be the chatbot. Okay, so let's go ahead and say get started. And it's going to go ahead and prompt us here, and we'll say get our first Twilio number. Okay, so now you just need to verify that it has SMS capability. And I would say 99% of them do. Okay, and if for some reason it doesn't, you can always just search for another one. But mine does, so I'm going to choose this number. All right, I have a brand new Twilio number. So now I can configure the webhook on this number. Okay, so I'm going to go to Manage Numbers. And I'm going to just click on my live number. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a couple different configurations, right? We've got voice and fax and messaging. And although, you can use voice and fax, we're only going to set up the messaging because, it's just a chat bot for messaging anyway. So we're going to configure with webhooks. Okay, so we'll leave this as default. And then when it says a message comes in to this webhook, instead of forwarding it to their demo address here, we're actually going to forward it to that ngrok address. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an endpoint. And I'm just going to call my endpoint inbound. And then I can just add that in my code accordingly. So now we need to set up a post request for an inbound endpoint. Okay, and whenever someone sends a text to our Twilio number, it will then go to our endpoint instead. All right, so let's go ahead and let's save that. Okay, all good there. So the next step is we need to create a message model, okay? So this is where Mongoose comes into play. We've already seen Mongoose connect us to our database, right? So now we're going to create Mongoose model, which is going to be a blueprint for our data. In a nutshell, that's what it is, okay? And so every message that's sent in, we're going to be expecting certain properties, okay? So let's go ahead and create this. I'm going to drop down here and we'll say let message schema equals new mongoose dot schema, parentheses, curly braces, enter. okay? And now we're going to pass in the characteristics of our message, okay? So in our case, we have an RSVP bot, right? So it would make sense to gather information like the phone number, right? Because we want to be able to text back and also have a phone number we can call the guest if need be. So let's start there. We'll say phone number, okay? And then we got to give a data type. And I'm actually going to give it a string data type. And that might seem a little weird to you at first because phone numbers are digits. But I'm doing this because our text message is going to come in as a string. And so if I just have everything as a string here, that makes it so we don't have to parse it. And it's less code and more efficient. So next, as well as the phone number, we want to enter the group name. Okay, so most of the time people are invited in groups, right? You know, people invite, you know, the Johnsons and, you know, the Potters and whatever. So let's go ahead and let's add a group name. And let's also make this a string. Oh, it looks like I had an extra T here. Let's get that out there. Okay. All right. So as well as that, I want to find out the total adults and the total kids that they're bringing, right? So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say total adults. We'll make that a string. And total kids, we'll also make this a string. Okay, and that's all information we need. Then we can plan our event accordingly. Okay, so now I'm going to create the model. So I'm going to say let message equals mongoose.model. I'm going to name it message, and the value is going to be the message schema. Okay. So now we have that set up. Let's go ahead and let's set up our post request, or our post endpoint, I should say. Okay, so as you can see right here, we've already got an endpoint set up for a GET request. So I'm just going to drop down right below that. I'm going to set up the endpoint for the post. So I'll say app.post. Okay, and then if you remember, we called our endpoint inbound. So I'm going to pass that in accordingly. Next, we produce the request and response objects and enter there. Okay, cruising right along. Once we get an inbound message, let's go ahead and break it apart, right? So it's going to be coming in on the request body, and that'll be rec.body. And so let's take it apart. Let's get who it's from, right? And you know, the specifics, the request body's information. So let's just start off by saying let from equals rec.body.from. Okay, and this is just my phone number, right? The one I'm sending the message from. Next, we'll have to, okay, and we'll just say rec.body.to. And finally, let's just go ahead and let's pass in the body, okay, which will be rec.body.body. If you'll notice, I'm just using uppercase for the actual, you know, property itself. So now I've pulled apart my message, right? I can then save those accordingly, you know, dependent on, you know, if it's a new conversation or an old one. Okay, so that's our next piece of code. We got to determine if the incoming message is a current conversation that's happening between the bot, right? Or if it's a completely new conversation. Okay, so how we're going to determine this is we're going to say message.find. Okay, and we're going to find all the messages that have a phone number that's equal to the from. Okay, so we'll say rec.body.from. Okay, and then from here, pass in our error and message objects. And in the event that it is successful, we'll go ahead and we'll console log the result of message. Okay. So finally, we want to end the response. So let's go ahead and let's say res.end. Okay, so now we're set up to where if we send in a text message to our Twilio member, it's going to catch in the webhook, forward it to this endpoint, and then we're going to pull that message apart, and we're going to look for any messages in our database that have a phone number belonging to that particular message. Okay, so let's test it out. Let's save all, and let's go to our connection here. Let's refresh. So we made some server-side changes. Okay, and now I'm just going to go to AirDroid here. I'm going to create a new message. Okay, and I just need to grab my Twilio number to send the message to. Okay, so I'll go ahead and grab this, and we'll copy that, and I'll place it in my to field. Okay, and I can really put anything here, so I'm just going to put test and hit enter. Okay, and then we can look in our ng-rock. We can actually see it let us know that we had a post request to our inbound endpoint, and the status was 200 OK. So that means it was successful, right? We're successfully communicating with our server now. Okay, and how we know is our console log went through. Okay, so we looked in the database and we didn't find any numbers that matched the from. Okay, so we know this is a new conversation if that's the case. And that's where our next bit of code comes into play. So let's go ahead and let's go to our code here, and let's write our setup for the condition. Okay, so we need to evaluate the length of the return message object to know what to do from there. Okay, so I'm going to say if message.length does not equal 0, okay, then we need to continue the conversation, right? Because if there is a message in the database, that means we've been talking to that person, right? But if there's no message in the database, we need to create a new conversation, okay? So now we can go ahead and we can set up our if statement to check for the RSVP keyword, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and say if body equals, we'll go and pass in RSVP. Then we'll go ahead and save that as a new conversation. So how we're going to do this is use Mongoose. Okay, so I'm going to say let new message equals new message. Okay, so we're creating a new instance of the message model. Okay, so from here, it's as simple as adding the phone number onto that message field, right? We need to save the phone number. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll say new message dot phone number equals, and then we can just pass in the from. Okay, so next, let's go ahead and save it. So I'm going to go ahead and say new message dot save. Okay, and then from here, let's run our callback. And in the event it's successful, let's go ahead and let's text back the person. Okay, so they're going to text in RSVP, and the chatbot is going to reply back now. Okay, and how we're going to do this is we're going to say client.messages.create. Okay, and now I need to pass in 3 different items. I need to pass in who it's to, who it's from, and the body. Okay, so I'm going to say to, and because we're sending it back to them, we want to pass in from. So I'm just going to use a template literal to do this. And I'm just going to say from. And then in the from field is going to be the to, right? Because it's the reply. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass in another template literal for to. And then finally, we'll pass in the body. Okay, so this is where our bot is going to actually have some intelligence, right? So if they text in RSVP, okay, we're going to save the phone number, and the next thing we need is their group name. So let's have our bot ask them that. Okay, so we'll say, what is your group name? Okay, and then after it sends that off, we'll go ahead and end the response. Okay, so now we have it set up to where if we send a message in, it'll be caught in our inbound. And then if it can't find any messages in our database that have a phone number related to it, we're going to create a new message altogether, and we're going to send them back a reply asking their group name as a way to continue the conversation. Okay? So from here, let's save all. And let's refresh our server. Okay. Now we need to go and we need to check our database. Okay. And we should have no collections, right? Nothing in here. So now let's go ahead and open up our phone and let's send in the RSVP keyword. Okay. I'm going to say RSVP send. Okay. And then we can see an NG rock shows us when the inbounds go through. Okay. So now we can see that went through. Let's go ahead and refresh. And we can see that it sent us back a reply. Hey, Eureka! We got our first contact. Look at that with signs of life. Okay. So it sent us back a reply now, right? What's your group name? So now we know, okay, we can continue the conversation. We can ask them how many adults they have, how many kids they have, and, you know, say goodbye, right? Your spot's reserved. So let's go ahead and finish the conversation. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, right, to our continue conversation section. And we're going to check to see if there is any information on the group name or the total adults or total kids. And if there isn't, what that means is we are on the first question. Okay, so I'm going to say if message at the index of 0 dot group name. That's right. We're going to start with group name. Group name, okay, does not exist. Okay, again, we're checking to see if that data existed in the database. And if the group name doesn't exist, we know we need to ask them for it, right? So let's go ahead and let's put logical operators here to add additional conditions. Okay, so I'm also going to see if the information for the total adults or total kids is there. So I'm going to say message at the index of 0 dot total adults. Okay, and finally we'll check if there's, you know, information on the kids. Okay, so we'll say if it exists or not. Dot total kids. Okay, so now what we can do is we can find that message by its ID and we can update it with the said response. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, message find by ID and update. Yeah.
Can you unshare and share?
Sure.
For some reason it's not sharing the screen.
Huh. That's odd.
An HDMI. Can you unshare and share again?
Sure. Let me try that. Okay, let's give it a minute. And sharing. Technical difficulties. They're bound to happen, at least once.
Okay, we can see your screen now.
Okay. That's good. All right, guys. Sorry about that interruption. I guess we're just coding too powerfully for it at the moment. Okay, so moving right along, we were at the part where we were looking for the message in our database to update and create. Okay, and if we look in our database now, we can see that we have the message, right? And this message has the phone number that was sent in. Okay, so this is our way of tracking our conversations in a persistent way using a database. So now we can go ahead and we can find the message by its ID. Okay, so the ID is this unique identifier right here. So let's go ahead and let's pass in message at the index of 0 dot underscore ID. Okay, so that's the first part. It's going to find this. Okay, and once it finds that document, it's then going to run the set operator. Okay, so let's go ahead and say ling set. Okay, and then we're going to be setting, the value, which is the group name, right? So let's go ahead and say group name is going to be equal to whatever the body is. Okay, so it's going to be the text body that's sent back. Okay, so now we need to upsert it to make sure, replace the old record with the new one. So let's go ahead and let's say new, true, upsert, and true. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and run a callback function. Okay, and at this time, we can ask the next question. Okay, so the first question we ask is, what's their group name? And then they're going to reply back, okay, and that's when this is going to run, right? So in the event that this runs, we need to go ahead and we need to send back the next question, which is, how many adults are in your group? Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say client.messages.create, and then it's business as usual. We want to use the same to and froms. So I'm just going to copy and paste these because, it's a little quicker there. And then the body is going to be unique, right? So the body will be how many adults are in your group. Okay, so this will be the next question. And after that, we'll go ahead and end the response. Okay, so now we've got a way to reply back with that second question. Let's go ahead and add the last questions. Okay, so the next question should be how many kids are in the group. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this if statement. Okay, because there's no need for me to repeat this whole block typing. If I can just run an else if right at the bottom here. Okay, so I just chained an else if here, and then we just need to modify our condition here. Okay, so in the event that there's a group name, but there are no adult information or kid information, then we know that they're sending in the request for the adult information. So what we need to do is we need to change this to total adults. Okay, and then we'll leave everything else the same, and we'll send back a different question. Okay, and this is going to be how many kids are in your group? How many kids are in your group? Okay, and then, and as usual, And finally, let's go ahead and do a last closing chat. Okay, so I'll just take my, my else if right here. Okay, I'll place one more down here. And then we're going to say, if there's no kid information, right, we know that that's what they're sending in. So we're going to set the body to the total kids. Okay, and then we're just going to close the conversation. So we'll say, you are all set. Your spot has been reserved. And we'll have all the information saved in our database. So we can, display it on a graphic user interface if we want, or whatever. Okay, so now we've set it up to where it's going to cycle through these questions and end the conversation. Let's go ahead and try it out. So first thing we need to do is we need to delete the current conversation, right? Because otherwise it's going to get confused. So I'm just going to delete conversation I currently have. And then I'm going to go and reset my server, pick up on all those changes I just made. Okay, looks good here. So let's go ahead and open up AirDroid, and let's start a new conversation. Okay, so I'm a guest. I'm going to type in RSVP, and I'm going to send that in. So just give that a minute, hit our server, do all of that stuff. Okay, so looks good here. Okay, so looks like that went through. So let's go ahead and refresh. You can see it's asking, what is your group name? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reply, Grace. My last name's Gray, so we'll just say the Grace. Okay, and we'll send that off in our reply. Okay. So from here, we'll just need to refresh, and it sends us back, okay, how many adults are in your group, right? Oh, great. So let's go ahead and say, okay, there's 2 adults in our group. Send that off. Give that a second. Bot thinks, the bot replies, and it lets us know, okay, now how many kids are in your group? Let's just say 3, and send that off. And it sends it off. And it's thinking, and it replies, and there we go. It says, you're all set. Your spot's been reserved. Okay? So let's go ahead and check out our database to see the guest's information. So we go ahead and we navigate to our MLab, and we refresh. We can see that I have the guest's phone number, I have their group name, the total adults, and total kids. And I could just keep collecting conversations because each conversation is unique to the phone number. And there's no such thing as a duplicate phone number in existence, so you'll always have unique conversations. Okay, and yeah, that about wraps it up for our workshop, guys. So why don't I pass the floor over to you guys if you have any questions on really anything.
I think we got lost with lost connection. There was a
Okay.
screen while you're typing out, so I think we kind of lost that part right there.
Okay, all right, no worries. It's recording on my end, so it should have all those details in for us after.
Okay.
Here.
This is available where?
I believe it's going to be available on our Facebook page, as well as our other social channels. I know they're going to broadcast it. So if anything, get with Taylor after this and let him know that you want a copy, and he'll take down your email address, and we can make sure we get that to you, okay?
All right. What were you doing to run 2 terminals at the same time?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
What were you doing to run the 2 terminals at the same time?
Oh, all I did was I just selected new window. And if you have a Windows, it's the same thing. It'll look different, right? It'll be black or something, but that's how I can run multiple windows. Does it make sense why I was running 2 at once?
Yeah, you're using one to check out the NG-Rec?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we just had to do that because, you know, Twilio doesn't know what our local server is, so we had to forward it to a live address so Twilio could find it on the web and actually, you know, intercept and send those, forward those messages to it. Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
How easy would this be to implement into a website? Is it like
Very, very easy. Yeah. I mean, really, when you think about it, you would have your client side, and the client side would have a form, right? They would say, what's your name and how many adults you have and how many kids you have. Okay, and so, you know, guests would go enter their information here, and it would take this information and it would post it, right? It would send a post request to our server, okay? And when we hit that endpoint, we could perform all this same logic, okay? So yeah, you could definitely add a graphic user interface if you wanted for a user. More traditionally than not, these days, if you're going to integrate chat in a website though, a lot of developers use real-time publishing services such as PubNub or Pusher, right? There's a lot of them out there, but those tend to be more preferable than using text messaging all the time, only because text messaging costs money, right? It's very little, but it is money at the end of the day. And these real-time publishing services, they're, I mean, they do cost money, but it's like you have to use so much volume, you pretty much will never pay. So yeah, I recommend if you're going to integrate with a live website, you would use a real-time publishing service like PubNub or Pusher. But if you just want to have, you know, a simple chatbot for planning a wedding or, you know, taking customers' orders, right? And you can simply tell your customer, hey, text RSVP to this number, or, you know, Valentine's Day to this number, right? And we'll give you a special, right? There's lots of stuff you could do with the tech side of it, but websites tend to use more of those real-time publishers. Does that help answer your question?
Yes.
Excellent. Good questions, guys. Any others today? Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming to our workshop. You know, we really appreciate everyone taking the time to come out here. I hope you learned something. I know we went pretty fast, but overall, I think you get in a nutshell. Making chatbots is actually not, you know, that hard, right? We did it in under an hour. So with a little hard work and dedication, you could easily make your own chatbot. Do a lot more too than we just did, you know. So keep an eye out for our, you know, video, and again, let Taylor know if you definitely want to get emailed that. But besides that, you know, have a great rest of your night, guys, and happy coding out there.
Thanks, Isaac.
All right, take care.